ago, the Board of Aldermen and the mayor gave my office permission to review applications that were submitted, and we did have 4 great companies that are experts in city planning and comprehensive plans submit proposals, and the committee chose Bob Barber and his company, the Orion Group out of Hernado, Mississippi, to share the presentation. So I'm not going to waste your time or Bob, and let him use all his time allotted. He thinks he can do it in 40, 45 minutes. And anyway, Bob Barber.
Thank you. Okay. Very good. Thank you. You do have a unique community, and it's really quite a pleasure to be with you tonight. It's really quite an honor to be with you tonight. And my goal is indeed to speak for 30, which probably means 35 minutes, and then have a few minutes of interaction after that. Thank you for the mayor being here, and I'm sure some of the aldermen or other elected officials may be here whom I don't know yet, but had a great conversation with the mayor the other day, and we have been eager. I've really been looking forward to speaking with the group, because when we saw your request for qualifications for a plan, mind you, not a planner, you're not hiring a city planner, but a process of planning for the future of New Albany, I was eager. So I know a little about New Albany because I'm close by in Hernando, and I know that New Albany is bubbling with vitality. We can drive in. I mean, we can drive in and within minutes tell if a community, come on in. The only seats are up front now, so and we know that about the community. And when we see that, it's a place that we'd like to work. And if the city wants to plan, wow, what great assets you have to work with. So based upon that, we responded to the RFQ with, which is a request for qualifications, with our team's qualifications. So let me tell you just a little bit about our team. It is, my group is Orion Planning and Design. Just a thumbnail sketch. You can look us up on the web. We'll pop up and you can read all about us. But just a thumbnail sketch. I spent, as a partner of Orion, I spent the last 16 years of a 25-year career in Mississippi local government as the planning director for the city of Hernando. Mayor, after 25 or 16 years in local government, I was ready for a shift. And I could retire, and I did. And some colleagues and I created Orion Planning and Design. That's been, we had a partner meeting this morning. That's been 9 years ago. So we've been at this about 9 years. My partners, one is here, Carol Ray from Huntsville, Alabama. She's the former president of the American Planning Association, and she's here with us. We have a partner in Boulder, Colorado, a partner in Missoula, Montana, a partner in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, a partner in Hernando, Mississippi, and who am I leaving out? Sheridan, Wyoming is our 6th. So we got 6 partners. And we do city planning. We do the things on that list right there. We also do some private design. It constitutes about 20%. So we work with developers, designing developments, getting them under construction and so forth, special area plans and so forth. That's what we do. This is where we have done it in those 9 years. We've done it from coast to coast, literally. And we have enjoyed all of that work. And I say that to say that when I bring the presentation to you, we're bringing it to you from a perspective that's coming from our work across the country, and that's my point in that. Again, you can look on the website. You can see our portfolio of work, our plans that we've done, the outcomes that we have witnessed based on the plans that have occurred, and so forth. It's all there. I won't waste your time with it, although it's not a waste of time. I won't take up your time with it right now. In our qualification response, we added others to our team. One is the Stennis Institute of Governments because they do excellent economic research. Another is Alta Planning and Design. They do great, they're the foremost mobility planners in the country. And you got one of the foremost unique and innovative mobility pieces to your community in the Tanglefoot Trail. Very, very unique. We also included Warner Allen Architects, who do downtown planning, and we have Arnett Muldrow to help us do downtown planning, and Johnstone and Associates and Shelley's here to help us with outreach. Now, those are the people we put in the RFQ. That's enough about us. I just want you to know that that's what's coming to you. So what I want to do is essentially three things. I want to give to you our approach to planning. I want to make a couple of observations as an outsider. Thank you for having us as a guest tonight. An observation, and I hope you will receive them well, about New Albany. And then perhaps we'll engage in discussion after that. Now, Billie Jean said New Albany is unique. I said you all know it's unique. The Tanglefoot Trail is an amazing achievement. It's a credible achievement. When I came to downtown New Albany about 6 or 8 years ago, when the trail first opened, and I saw cars from all over downtown New Albany, I mean, what's happening? So, quite an achievement. The facility we're in, the museum, is wow. The arts that I see, art activities going on, and all of that is, you see, there's pieces of it all about. So we know that there's energy and vitality. Now, let's talk about if you were to plan your community, if you were to think about its design 20 years from now, where it is headed, and how you would guide it. Let me express how we would approach such a task if we were assisting in the task. First of all, you need to know that our understanding of a community is that it is a system. Everything is connected. The streets are connected to the way land is used, or that's connected to the prosperity of business, that's connected to the quality of neighborhoods. It's all an ecology, if you will. It's a web of relationships and systems, and it's all a web. And it's all connected. So that's one thing. Another key point that we community as a whole in the life cycle, you really have to think about it as individual parts of the community. So that there will be certain areas that are in a decline phase, while certain other areas are in a growth phase. The point being, there's no one size fits all when we approach the future of a community. That's our approach. Now, if we were engaged in this task, we would want to create a flag, a brand, a project brand, such as, where's my branding? Such as, whatever it's going to be, an icon, a logo, and then we're going to march together and attack this task of considering the future. Now, as I go through this quickly, not too quickly, but it'll be brisk. I want you, perhaps it might be useful to think of if you were building a house. What would you do if you were building a house? Well, first, number one thing, we got to know some facts about our circumstances. How many kids do I have? How big a house do we need? What is it going to function? Do we entertain guests? What's the role of our house? Do I just sleep there one night a week or 7 nights? So we're gonna build a house. We need to know the facts. Then, based on facts, we need to know what kind of house we're going to build. We're going to dream. These are the facts. This is the house I want. And we're going to design that house. And at the tail end of the process, we're going to get out hammers and nails, or hire somebody to get out hammers and nails and build it. It's not unlike, use the analogy of the process that I'll quickly, briskly walk you through. This is a planning process. It starts with a discovery phase, then there's a direction phase, that's setting vision, then there's a design phase when we project the future of the community, and then there's the critical point of implementation. You cannot implement any plan well if you haven't gone through the process. There has to be a process, and it has to be well executed to get a good product out of it. Okay, so let's look at it. First of all, in the discovery phase, our approach is fact-based discovery. We want to know the facts. So that means historical facts. Why is New Albany here? How did it grow? What's its evolution? All of the history of the community, the key markers, the milestones, the historic figures, and so forth. All of that's a part of the facts. You have an environmental setting. And you really have a unique environmental setting here as one of the very few cities in our state with a river running right through the middle of it. What is the natural environment? What are the facts about it? How is it made up? How does it impact how people live? Then there is a whole thorough set of research related to your economy, neighborhoods and housing. This is an example, and I'm going to refer to a plan we're just wrapping up that's been well embraced, the process of being embraced in Corinth, where we're identifying homeowners versus rental homes, and determining what are the issues that grow out of that. How does that impact neighborhoods, and what are the future implications of that? There's an element of land use. Very important. One of the things we do is we take your existing configuration of zoning, the way you're coded now, and we assume the city builds out. We can draw a picture, or map a picture, of what product you're going to end up with if you stay on the path that you have. We can predict it fairly precisely in doing that. So that's called a build-out analysis, land use elements and so forth. Thank you for that. That's part of a build-out analysis of a plan. Now, not just enough to have the facts, we need to understand what trends are affecting New Albany. There are three. We could dwell on this for the entire time, but we're not. But I want you to know there are three important trends that will impact your community and are already impacting it probably. Demographics are changing. This community, like most others, is aging. Its average age increases steadily every year. And there are fewer young people. So then we can look at demographics and we can determine if we have fewer young people coming up and a lot of old people, we face some population challenges in the future. It's just one change. Mobility is changing. Any of you have teenagers? Come on, I'm sure y'all got teenagers around here, if you were reluctant hands. You know, when I was a teenager, I would have a car before I had a driver's license. Now it's hard to get kids to go get their driver's license. Some of you may not have faced that, but if you look at the national chart, there is less interest in driving. In fact, young folks want to be downtown, typically. So there's a change there in the way people move around. And the very fact of your biking facility here is a testament to changing mobility patterns. How does that biking pattern extend throughout the community, so forth, changing? And not to speak of changes in technology. As I was driving over, we hear Uber and autonomous vehicles and so forth. It'll be a long time before that reaches a town of 8,000 or 10,000 people. But it's coming, and we can think it needs to be thought about. Then finally, there's a sharing economy. How many of you are members of Amazon Prime? I've calculated that by the end of the year, I will have spent $8,000 to $10,000 on Amazon Prime. Now, if we assume that 20% of Hernado, my town, is member of Amazon Prime and does a similar thing that I'm doing, That is a $30 million impact to the local retail economy. That impacts the demand for retail space. It also creates pressures for existing retail spaces to, the challenge. You probably see some closures. If not, you likely will see some unless population and inclusive direction. That's where we engage. Okay, here's our data set. You tell us, or you tell yourselves, what that means for the future of the community. Multiple ways of achieving that. Focus groups, we've all been a part of, pulling out the data, determining your own future with your own drawing and your own maps, facilitating that input, entering into an extended week-long planning week experience. Tons of ways of doing it. The point is to be collaborative and inclusive. We bring experience, but we don't bring answers. You have the answers. And we can guide that, we can facilitate it, we can express it, we can say, all right, let us tell you what we hear you saying, and you plan the community. So, nobody comes and says, we're going to tell you what you already know, because we don't know. You know, we don't. But we can facilitate it in a productive way for the future of the community. Just one quick exercise that we like doing, loves and cautions, where a community meeting, if we were doing it tonight, you put a red dot on places about New Albany you love, and a yellow dot on places that, there's some caution there, you have some concern about it. We can use that then to guide and frame up. That's just one example. Another thing that inclusivity means is engaging young folks. People in the schools, your high school students need to be asked, are they coming back? It's a big deal in Mississippi. Are you creating places that people want to come and raise their family, come back after they go to college? It's a challenge in our state. They need to be included in the process. Older folks that can't come out to a public meeting, they need to be included in the process. All ethnic groups, as much as we can. Now, this is a human endeavor, and so we work at getting it done. Business people, bankers, healthcare, the economic sector, all of that is part of inclusive engagement. Now, in New Albany, we don't know what the community responds to. Every community is different. When I ask a question in some communities, people might jump out of their chair to answer. When I ask it in New Albany, that's fine. You have a way of expressing yourself that we need to find the right way of gathering that inclusive engagement. Am I making sense? Are you with me? Okay, so we have a whole toolbox of doing that, from polling and online engagement to community meetings where we would hunker down and have a real intensive exercise with you designing the future of the community. The purpose of all of that, now I'm going to use an example from Corinth, is to get a vision, get a real vision, okay? In Corinth's case, it was Envision Corinth. That was their selected brand. And they wrote the vision. Now, we scribed it, we put it in language, but this is what the result of our community meetings were. Envision Corinth. Envision a city of excellence, rooted in history. I'm not going to read it all. Envision a community dedicated to the advancement of its people. Envision safe, revitalized neighborhoods. Envision downtown that thrives, is vital, the heart and soul of the community. Envision tree-lined streets. Envision a sought-after destination, hospitality, so forth. Envision abundant business opportunity. Envision, I love this that they inserted, community where elders are seeking to pass on their wisdom to younger generations. So envision authentic community, envision true home. That's a idealized statement. But it is a legitimate expression of the hopes and dreams that came out of a planning process. And it's valid. And we take that vision and we can then say, all right, what does that mean for your community in 10 years and 20 years? And we can generate principles of what it means, of how the community is going to treat itself to meet that vision. And then from that segment, we can then move into vision-driven design. So that we're looking at the future, driven by vision of the community itself. And our model uses what we call a planning continuum. So when I drove to New Albany the other day, I came up from Oxford, and I came through the natural area of the National Forest, and then I got into some rural areas, and then I got a little closer and I got suburban areas on the outskirts, and then I got a little closer, I got to the dense neighborhoods, and then suddenly I'm downtown, and then we're here. So that natural progression is the way we frame up and think about how you design the future of the community. What does that mean? So there's the examples flying in from the PowerPoint of what those kinds of places are. So from that, we generate that idea, we generate unique place types for the community. And New Albany has some very unique place types. Not like Corinth, not like any other, not like Hernando's, they're New Albany's. We want to know what they are and why they are yours and why they are like they are. So this is an example. In this case, a unique place called a downtown gateway. We map it. Where is that located? This is where most conventional planning stops. This is where your existing plan stops, the 2009 plan. We want to extend that. What does that red color mean? It means this. This is what it means in response to our vision. All right, then. That's a pretty picture, Bob. Anybody can throw a picture up there. What does it really mean to the people that are building our community? Right? It means this. And we generate these kinds of places throughout the community. And this then becomes a plan of substance and vision, and that works for a community. That's what we do. That's just one example. I don't want to, because of our time, well, here's one more example. In this case, what was called a vertical mixed use. Buildings that go up, they have multiple things, like you have downtown, living above. All that's created, but also to include the mobility parts of the plan. What are the streets like? Are we accommodating pedestrians? Is there a place for boulevard? All this is a part of placemaking, the exercise of placemaking. Now, that's a general approach. It's very general. We want to hunker down, is that an okay word? We want to focus in on some special areas. So we pick a few of those places in the community. In this community, we picked about 5 of them. And the issue here in that special area was infill. How would you address infill in a specific place in the community, not just a general vague notion? So we take that place and we design it. How will it work if it was redeveloped? Take that vacant lot. How would that work if that was redeveloped? This then has the potential, and we've seen it occur many, many times, not a guarantee, it doesn't always happen. But many times it generates interest and investment in the community because you visualize places, how they can be redeemed and renewed and refreshed. And this is one place that resulted in renewed investment. This will be a project going out to bid. If it hadn't already gone out to bid, an investor will buy it and they will build that space. And it will be built similar to what's in that plan. So that's how that focal area works. But it's not just visualizing, it's also dealing with the boring, nitty-gritty stuff of how the community is coded. In this instance, a suburban sprawl code has been misapplied to a historic downtown. And what we're demonstrating to the leadership of the city in this is that you are destroying the historic fabric of your historic neighborhoods based on misapplied government regulation. And we show that, and indeed this requires a big parking lot in front of a house where the historic building pattern is here. That's the way we focus in on those areas. If we took, for example, a shopping area, this is it was thriving at one time. Now it's pretty dead. That parking lot's probably 25% full at most at the busiest time of year. When I look at this, I see an eyesore in the community, but also wasted space, some waste and value. There's value being left on the table. So help the community envision, how can this redevelop? How can we pull buildings up, infill the parking lot? And this happens over time. You'll notice it's a 20-year life cycle. None of this happens tomorrow. This is a process, incremental change over time. But we begin to shift the development pattern at that corner, and over time it becomes renewed into a new, vital kind of place. Mix of uses. We extract certain principles we're after here, the right streets, the right walkability, retrofitting landscaping. All these principles come out of a plan. Now this is vision for the future. And it's productive vision, helpful vision. It's vision that generates investment and livability. And just so you can believe that you can take a parking lot and retrofit it with better design, here's one example or two examples of retrofitted parking lots of old 70s suburban style development. I don't know why my voice is doing this. Another example, taking a corridor like this and envisioning how it can be changed. Now, this is implemented by two mechanisms, policies and projects. Policies deal with everything outside on the private side of the property line, where the building sits, where the curb cuts go, all that sort of thing. This is a public project. In fact, in this case, it'll be an MDOT project. They'll pay for it. It's their highway. And they will do this over time with reasonable efforts. These kinds of things can be generated. Re-envisioning space, we could go on and on with re-envisioning these places. That's what we mean by vision-driven design. Finally, outcome-focused. You know, we can draw, we've got some talented partners, not me, but some of my partners can do great design work. And it's just like our building the house analogy. If we draw the blueprint up and never hire the contractor, there we are. So we got to get the implementation going. So we got outcome-focused implementation. I already mentioned policies, projects, and management. That's how you implement plans in those three categories. There must be a coherent and systematic way of expressing implementation that's prioritized, who's responsible, how do we know that we're successful or we're making progress, and checking up on it periodically for accountability. Those are the ingredients. So that an implementation part of a plan needs to be doable. Now here's another thing. The city can't do everything. And you all know it in New Albany because you have vibrant groups that are doing all kind of stuff, and the city's doing stuff. So that plans are developed as partnerships. Civic groups, local government, all this is a partnership. And that's what plan implementation is. We want to bring an understanding in a place like this. That red line represents a 10-minute walk. In that 10 minutes, this is a 180-year-old place. In that 10-minute walk, there are homes, services, restaurants, a farmer's market, recreation, healthcare, banking, a church. You can pretty much live life right there. Versus that 10-minute walk. That's the same red line, the same scale. What are you going to do in that 10-minute walk?
Right.
You're going to ride and shop, assuming the stores are still open. Remember what I said about declining trends. So we think about these sorts of lessons when we build vibrant, vital communities. Let me give you one more quick example because I've used New Albany for years on this example, just watching from afar. If we were to put on pro forma, and I'm probably bumping my time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. If we were to compare the economic performance of this big box retailer versus your traditional downtown, and we evaluated it based on property tax generated, amount of retail sales, a local multiplier, a tourism tax, the jobs generated, the residents it'll accommodate, the cultural and health amenity, and the social utility, meaning where the neighbors gather and do neighborly things. This kind of place wins almost every time. It is not to say, and don't take this message away from our meeting, that this is not okay. This is okay. But it needs to be well balanced with the kinds of places that will endure and serve your children, your grandchildren, long after you and I have moved on. And there's your city. I've shown this all over the country with the impact of the trailhead at Tanglefoot, and I probably should put more red dots on there now. After Tanglefoot, every red dot represents a rehabbed building. And again, there's probably more there because I hadn't updated it in a couple of years. One more lesson, and then I'm going to move into, I shouldn't say lesson, one more item of our experience, and I'll move into 3 observations about New Albany. This is how we understand place making and local economics to work. Not exclusively, but often a missing part when people are thinking about their community. So this is in Hernando. It's a true story. It happened when I was still planning director. The Mexican restaurant here, of which we all have many Mexican restaurants, wants to add a deck. Here's the deck. Here's the finished deck. Now, the reason that investment was able to be made comfortably was because the backside of the Walgreens, the back of the store, the backside of that Walgreens was treated in a dignified and responsible way at the urging of local government. In fact, if you examine this picture, behind this wall is where the dumpsters are. That's where they keep the trash. And yet we're able to get an investment for a deck, a local business, small business person out here on the side. Now, we put up our pro forma again. We run through the pro forma of new revenue and new sales tax and owner profit and tourism tax and investment and half a job added. We get a benefit, new revenues of $100,000, which is not a lot of money in the scheme of things. But if you multiply that 10 times in the community, what do you get? You get $1 million impact. So that becomes a way versus how we typically, anything goes kind of situation, we generate 0. Not only do we generate 0, we get a mediocre place. So this is a way I'm conveying that we understand these things. I'll skip that one. I'll skip this one for time. It's just comparing ways of treating buildings. I will comment on this. Over time, which building will endure and be useful over time? Something like this or something like this? Another approach to it. And as I mentioned, capturing value, this is how the coding impacts it. In this particular community, as is so often the case, this is a symptom all over the place. A code required that. You see how many cars are in their parking lot? That's peak. There's never more than that in that parking lot. Look at all that value right there. Real estate value just sitting there. How can we code that at least makes possible the efficient use of that space? Not only making it possible, but creating a more comfortable and satisfying community in the process. Well, we coded to do that. And that's based on all the preceding vision and design work we've done. So there's some ideas. These are just simple models, very simple models of how to make space more valuable, efficient, make communities better. Now, here's my observations. Okay, we good? Everybody okay? So, I introduced myself. We went through the planning process, our approach to communities. We gave some examples of it, of how that plays out. Now, let me observe New Albany. Again, we're guests. This is our eyes and interacting with the city over the past 6 months or so. Observation number one. What is New Albany's vision? This website is your front door. And I compliment you on the website. There's a lot of really nice stuff. I did not know there was a wolf sanctuary. I'll take my son over there to see it probably this weekend over by Puskas Lake. There's tons of good stuff. I did not know New Albany was a top small town in America from USA Today. Good stuff. All right, I'm an investor. I want to invest money. What is your vision? Where do you see this community moving and growing? I don't see it there. So what is the plan? What is your development potential? I'm not seeing it from your front door. What are the market opportunities? I'm not certain. What level of quality of investment are you looking for? And this is important. I'm not getting a sense of that. It's not that it's not there. I'm just not seeing it. Now, observation number two. This relates to your zoning code. And I asked the question, your zoning code is 1980 model. That's 38 years. For round numbers, if you're okay, let's say it's 40 years old. Can you develop a competitive city of vision and excellence based on a 40-year-old tool? Knowing that things have we don't do business the way we did it 10 years ago. Things have advanced. So, some more examples of that. This is a timeline starting in '69 with Armstrong's walk on the moon and ending tonight, 2018, our current discussion. Here's your code. Now, code is an implementation tool of a plan. There was a plan in '99, there was a plan in '09. We've looked at both of them, and they've been helpful to the city. But the code doesn't reflect that. You're working with old tools to support it. Here's some of the reasons they don't work well for the city. This code is what's called a pyramid code. Now, this is a largely discredited way of approaching community development. In the industrial, and I could have included Act 2. In your industrial district, you can do everything that's in the light industrial district. In that district, you can do everything there that's also in the C2 district. And in that district, you can do everything that's also in the C1 district. If you see the pyramid, what you end up with is a kind of amalgamation of things in certain parts. This is an old method of doing things. And so I just took a look at this corridor that goes from 22 to downtown, right there along the river. And this is the form of it, and there are lots of different things in there, and it's not the most inspiring approach to downtown. And it's probably due to the coding. Well, it is due to the coding. It's the way that it's coded over time. So, the quality of a city form is directly related to the quality of coding. This is a slice out of your code. This is how coding is done now. It's illustrative, easy to follow, promotes investment, etc. Another slice out of the New Albany zoning code. This is the way coding is done now. Helpful, easy to navigate. No code's ever pleasant, but as pleasant as possible. That sort of thing. Another example. Here's another few things. I've been mentioning parking. Here's your parking scale, 200 square feet for every retail, 200 square feet for every 1,000 square feet of retail. That is an old suburban model. I couldn't quite gather. Y'all probably make exceptions to it for downtown, but it seemed like it applied to downtown too. Many communities are doing away with parking minimums. Who has more vested interest in parking cars at a business than the person who's invested money to park to do business there? So I'm not suggesting that, by the way. I'm just telling you that's a trend. The number of illustration in the current code, 0. This was interesting. 25% of the code, 18 pages out of 64, are devoted to sexually oriented businesses. Regulating them. You know, something may have happened in New Albany that generated that, but my point is, a code is a tool. This is observation number 3, and we're done. Let's look at the big picture. These are it's just an observation. This is New Albany, and we add in the river, Tallahatchie River, and the various streams. We add in the streets and roads there. We add in the floodplain, and we have an emerging picture, the old city here, the newer areas here. And then I want to take a slice of it, and these are questions that come to my mind. It's a great ballpark right there. Wonderful park, the B&A Park. It's better than many, many, many parks. Kudos for that. Here's a downtown. Can we, is there opportunity for connectivity? What about the long term of downtown? We've already mentioned the connecting corridor here. Here's the Tallahatchie River. I'm sure y'all thought about that river many, 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 many times. But I can't help but wonder, is there connection potential to park, to downtown, to these areas? And then, what's the long-term future of this entryway? And then here's a corridor right here that leads out to the interstate. What's the future there? Kind of a suburban expansion area. And then we get to the Walmart site. What is that? The big parking lot. Is there more to come? And then there's the traffic and the mobility issues surrounding this area right here. And then I pick up Mr. Shiverdecker's website today, and I see the family that wants to donate this right here. That's a big deal, What's the use of that? What's the future use of it? What's the potential of it? All I'm doing is raising questions, because I'm trying to paint a picture of a vital community with tons of energy and obvious ambition to be an excellent place. And I see vital here, vital, and I want to know, what is the vision of New Albany? What is the overall long term? Where is this headed? And then you throw in this coding in the mix of it, you see where I'm going. Okay? So, to wrap it up, and I'm probably over, I'm sorry if I went over. I tried to make it 35 minutes. Best planning practices, those are key planning practices, but the point is, New Albany, this is the way we entitled it, New Albany by chance or New Albany by design? That's the question. And then that's supposed to represent the ball is in the community's court. And that's where we'll stop. So, thoughts, questions, comments. Thank you for your attention. No one fell asleep. I didn't get hit with anything. So, that's a success. I hope that's helpful to you. That's who we are, that's what we do, that's the way we observe the community. Yes, yes, ma'am.
I'm a senior citizen, and I think the things you talked about with New Albany's growth is right on track. It's one of the things that attracted my husband to come and retire here. And I like part of what you said here about the community of existing residents need to be included, because that's my major concern, is my neighborhood.
Right.
I know I
Right.
can come and shop, and I can do all the things I can need to do, and go to the doctor, I can, pick up groceries, buy clothes, whatever I want to do, and I'm in a good, safe environment. Not so necessarily in my community.
Yes.
So I'm glad to see that that is an important part of this. And also another thing that you touched on that I have a passion for, I think the park along the river could be a diamond
Yeah.
if we did more with that area. It is awful out there on the walking trails,
Mhm.
but it could be glorious if there were perennials planted, if there were flowering shrubs, and as many community service groups as we have in this town. I just don't understand why it's not happening, and so I'm glad to see that part of it too.
Yes, yes. Yes, it's a unique asset, there's no doubt about it. And I would not pretend to think that y'all hadn't thought about that, and there have been runs at it and so forth. So I'm not presuming anything, because I don't know. But I just know, looking at it, I'm thinking, wow, that's a real potential asset in this community. It's already. So, yeah. All right, other? Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to piggyback on her comment about she's someone who chose to retire in New Albany. What are your ideas about a community our size having a pool which would cater to not only the retirees, but also to the younger people and attract young families into our community, taxpaying families?
Well, there's multiple components to that. It has to be, who's going to do it, number one. Is there a market for it? Is there enough critical mass of patrons to make it sustainable? Those would be two key questions. But in theory, yes, those kinds of places, YMCA type component to a community, makes it even more desirable for folks to come. So without having studied the community and entered into in-depth understanding of the dynamics of New Albany, yes.
Go back to these two women, their comments. One of the things that the plan does, as Bob says, the plan, community system, and it's all connected. And the plan brings all that together, and it provides a cohesive vision for the community. And until you have that, sometimes it's hard to get the buy-in, because people are like, what are we going to do with the trail down by the river? Where's it going to go to? What benefit is it going to have? Or is there a need for a swimming pool? Is that tract of land that's going to be donated? What do we need it for? So the plan helps you answer a lot of these questions and build support for a lot of these different projects that by themselves seem really disconnected. So I think that's something that to keep in mind.
Yeah, I was going to go back, and I've ruined my opportunity now, but I was going back to find this kind of thing right here. Is something that we really have seen lots of results from. When we can get a business guy and executive leadership sitting down with community folks and talking these issues through, there is a buy-in built, and typically there's momentum built. Now, it doesn't last forever. I meant to make this point. You've got an 09 plan. You can't expect it to serve you forever. Things have to be refreshed and updated and new experiences incorporated into the community. So yes, buy-in is what she was speaking to, and that's what this process helps do.
In that same way, you can show the success in that perpetual process of reinventing the wheel, making sure that everybody understands this is the plan, this is what we
Yeah.
set out to do, this is what we did, this is what we expected to happen, this is what happened.
Yeah, you're benchmarking. Yeah. Good point. Yes, Jill.
Can you define more the economic impact of desirable retirement? What does that
Well,
mean
let-
for the city?
Let's say that Well, retirees, typically they have more disposable income, typically. They're usually not out gallivanting all night long and the police having to come and arrest them. It's not always the case, especially in my case, but just a joke. But so you've got wealth and you've got low demand on community services, and you have, as importantly, volunteer
Do you
time.
have any information, since you've been doing this for a while, and for sure, this impacts the city economically, but how does it produce revenue? Do you have any studies that show the revenue-producing effect of these plans and how they've actually been successful in these towns?
Sure. So that process that I showed you there with the Mexican restaurant, that's real revenue. That really happened. And it happened 20, 30 times in the community. And there was a flourish of economic activity based on that kind of thing. We can document that. I have another example. I love that old building. I'm disoriented now. Over here, the multiple-story building, the old brick building. So Greenwood has one just about like that. And we visioned that, revisioned it, put a portfolio on it of what it would cost, rough numbers, to rehab it, what its purchase price is, make a prospectus. There's a contract on it as of last week. I was speaking to the MDA. We speak with before Mississippi Development Authority frequently, multiple times a year, about the economic benefits of doing this. So I can't quote you. I mean, I can quote you those numbers, and I can quote you the general impacts of these plans. And if we went and measured it, think of this way. Let's say it costs the city $80,000 to $120,000 to do a really well-done plan. The question that always arises, wow, is that worth it? Should we do that? You know, I don't know about that. I love to say, what is it costing you not to do? Where are the costs that you're leaving on the table? Where are the missed opportunities? And I wager to say, a community that hasn't done good planning in over a decade is leaving millions on the table. Millions. So that's my answer to that question. I think we could show that too.
What did they envision for the building similar to this?
Housing converted into condos and lofts. It's a steel building. If you've been to Greenwood, it's the old Maloof Furniture Building. I can't remember what you told me that building was.
Sure.
But it was a similar old industrial building. They envisioned it into lofts. And there's a contract on it. Now, I can't guarantee the contract will go through. I can't guarantee the project will happen in the end. But there is movement to get stuff going. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you give me a realistic expectation of how a good plan would affect the demographics, particularly income in a community, and also bringing in and retaining young people?
That's an excellent question. All these questions are excellent, by the way. So I just displayed the coding, how the coding kind of is probably not as, well, I know it's not as productive for the community as it could be. That ultimately translates into potential for deteriorating neighborhoods and people who disinvest in the community. So appropriate planning and coding reverses that cycle. And we can show this, that the spiral then turns upward and you generate people moving into those communities to invest, translating into population growth. The quality of the community increases, the quality of the development increases. Now hear me say this, I'm not talking about just wealthy people. I'm talking about solid people across the board. And when you get quality built environment, you're going to have solid people, whether they be on the low end of the spectrum or the upper end of the spectrum. So that's what these plans typically produce. If, and let me put the if on it, if the New Albany does a plan, I already mentioned on implementation, if it's embraced and implemented well by the community, because we will leave, we'll be gone, and you're left with it. So there's a podcast that I did, Strong Towns. I don't know if you remember, if you've ever heard of Strong, you can Google Strong Towns, Bob Barber, you'll come up with the podcast. I mentioned to Chuck Marone in our interview, consultants are seed planters. That's what we do. We plant seeds. We help the community get their crop planted. Now, after it's planted, we're gone. Somebody's got to be on the farm day after day, tending that crop, making sure that the stuff's coming up, that it's watered, that it's growing, it's blooming, etc. And that's the community's role. We can't do that. And that's why I make a point of saying you're not hiring a city planner if you engage someone to help you plan. You're investing in the future. That's what you're doing. Whose question was asked? Did you ask me? Sorry, I got to get off on a sidetrack and go all kind of ways with it.
So what I hear you saying is that when we leave our communities wandering, just not doing anything with them, and like in my neighborhood, within 2 blocks of my house, there are at least 4 vacant houses, and 2 of those have been vacant for several years.
Yes, ma'am.
We're losing money.
Oh, sure. Sure, that's disinvestment. That's disinvestment. So I don't want, you've heard me say multiple times, New Albany's a fantastic spot. I'm telling you. I say, tell my friends, I tell Carol, man, this is a cool, lady, this is a cool place. This is cool. They got Tanglefoot, they got the arts, they got the best museum. So all of that is good. But I would want to understand, why is that disinvestment occurring in that neighborhood? How can we re-envision that space and make it attractive for investment? Those are the questions that are asked. The other part of, well, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, that's how I would be investigating that. Yeah. So this is my impression as I look from afar, again, just gathering information. I see a pocket of energy here, and the city did some cool stuff there, and here's a citizens group. Look at that. I'm wanting to say, all right, let's connect the dots. Let's connect all that up and generate just a swap. Yes, ma'am.
What was the growth, like when Hernando was about our size, and with that, and
When I started planning directing in 1996, the population was 3,200 people. I was their first full-time planning director. And when I did it, I talked to my wife. I said, I think I made a mistake. I don't think I'm going to have enough to do. This might have been a mistake. It wasn't long before we built a portfolio of projects. From 1996 to the time I left in 2011, the population was 15,000, right at 15,000. Now, we're in the Memphis metro area. We had population to draw from, so there's that. What'd you ask me?
I don't know if I can remember it.
Okay, well.
I asked you, how long, from, I guess, the time that maybe.
Well, I know those figures. In 96, it was 3,200, and in 2011, 16 years later, it was 15,000. And I can assure you, if planning had not been done well in that context, that town would be nothing. I mean, I shouldn't say it'd be a town, but it wouldn't be a quality town. The planning that made it quality. And in fact, the year I left, it was on the top 100 Forbes list as one of the best small towns in America. That occurred by the way it stewarded and managed its growth. Not afraid to take on new trends, new visioning, gather the community, and what is the best for our community. It wasn't all sweetness and light. There were discussions. There's been robust discussions about planning here, spirited discussions, should. We did all that too. But the general commitment forward was there. And so that was that experience. But let me say, I'm not comparing this to, I don't want to, there's tons of other experiences like that around the country. Yeah.
So, hi Bob,
Hi.
I've talked to you on the phone, I'm Amy Livingston, Alderman here, but I'm also a citizen.
Yes.
And I have a couple of questions about the planning process with Corinth. I know you had mentioned to me that they at first were not really for it, and I talked to the mayor today, and he confirmed that.
So the mayor has become a real friend. His first words to me when we were only introducing ourselves, "Are you joking me? I got to overlay streets." Well, sure. Yeah, you got to overlay streets, but you also got to think about where you're going to be 20 years from now. So anyway, that was the kind of, there's real, those decisions are real. There has a choice has to be made where the resources are going.
And the quote he said to me that sticks with me, because I feel this way, he's like, we're politicians, we're not planners. What do we know about placement of things and where things should go, what to do? And that's how I feel on a daily basis. Like, I don't know if this street should be planted. I don't know if that building should be a municipal building. I don't know enough about that kind of stuff to make those kind of decisions. I'm a politician, a new one.
Yes, and he was, I think, pleasantly surprised at the process of engaging the community to plan. And also with regard to, you're going to spend money on something, this, or this. The question is, where do you get the best bang for the buck? So in my view, I'm a planner. I tell you, I'm coming from that perspective. The minimal investment in planning reaps tremendous dividends, provided that two things happen. The planning is done well, and the planning is implemented. There's dividends, far more than the day-to-day, seeing a few months down the road. Yeah. Good question. Yes, yes, sir.
By the way, I noticed that there were more red dots in Mississippi, so you must be the...
I'm the guy. That's right.
And this may be a difficult question to answer, but of all your success stories with these cities, how many of those cities actually have a city planner?
That's a good question.
I may not know the exact number, but is that more common than...
I would say 75%.
Have a planner?
Yes, yes. Smaller the community, the less likely. The more southern the community, the less likely. Oftentimes there is someone functioning in a planning role, like official or Main Street people or something like that, which can be trained and provided the tools to function as planners, so the people may already be in place and we just need to bring them along to some of the new methods and new vision. But anyway, 75-25. Yes, sir.
In all the towns that y'all have done work with, have y'all dealt with a town that was in a similar position as Albany, in that we are, in my opinion, on a leading edge when it comes to quality of life type things, such as the trailhead and our sportsplex facility, and a lot of other things about our town, downtown being great, but where New Albany seems to be lacking, and this is coming from, personal observations being in the real estate business and building business, is that we have a severe housing inventory problem here. A lack of.
Yeah.
We have a high concentration of older homes, a very low concentration of new construction. And what that has done, in my observation, is that people moving to a new place that have a lot of good quality of life attractions, not only do they want those quality of life things, but they want to be able to have a desirable home. And with the inventory being older like it is, I've noticed that a lot of people bypass our town to go to other areas to be able to get into more new construction. And what are some things that y'all maybe specifically done with some other towns in the older neighborhoods, such as zoning changes and dealing with setbacks and allowing for easier ways to apply for variances for non-conforming use and things of that nature that will take those older neighborhoods and create things like that, but also what are some things that the city could do to incentivize developers
Good question.
to put in new construction, to remove some of the inventory from the older homes, to open up more rental property, to lower rental rates, because we have really high rental rates on average. What are some specific things in specific towns that y'all have done that in?
So without having studied New Albany housing in detail and consulted and collaborated with you and people in your profession, it's hard to speak to New Albany circumstances. In this particular case, this is a piece of city-owned property that they're getting rid of that's surplus. I just ran out of time. I meant to check the Secretary of State website to see which of these properties have been struck off to the Secretary of State. It can be obtained by the city and redeployed in the housing market. So there's that. Incentives, we'd have to have a long discussion about the incentives of what the city would want to do or felt feasible to do, et cetera. But the other side of it, so there's that economic side, the other side, and the supply side, the other side of it is regulatory. How is this stuff coded? Are there barriers there that are preventing those lots from being deployed? If they're barriers, what are they? Are there developer unnecessary hassles for developers? Now, don't hear me say I'm a zoner, so they have to be coded properly. But that's the key word, is properly. We need to make sure that the coding fits the objective of the city. So there's the economic side. You mentioned incentives. There's opportunity. I'm sure there's pockets of opportunity out here that the city can prime up. And there are other things. If you want to get way out, there are land trusts and other kinds of things of obtaining property and putting it back on the market. So that's a part of the planning process. Yes.
But you've done that kind of thing? I mean, you've done that with other communities?
We did it right there.
Yeah. I mean, more than one time, like multiple times?
Yeah. Oxford has a huge problem with affordable housing, so we're all up in that. But Oxford's not a comparable example. Where else is our housing working? Greenville had tons of opportunity. Yes, we've done that work.
Just about everywhere we work has a housing issue.
Yeah, something we're addressing.
In your downtown, you didn't bulldoze the buildings, you rehab them. Oftentimes your existing housing stock is also some of the most affordable, and the problem isn't necessarily that people want new housing, it's that they want good housing. Yeah. And so what we find is when you get good infill projects like this, it causes people to think,
if this comes off, and I think it will, if suddenly all these other marginal properties around here become more attractive, so this induces investment. And we had a direct experience of that as a public planner over in Hernando. We were able to achieve a lot doing that. So.
I would think that older homes are also an attraction, wouldn't it, to certain people?
Yes.
Historic homes?
Yes.
So a combination of new and preserving older homes?
Yes, without a doubt. And there are incentives, preservation incentives for doing that. Yes, that's in the mix as well. So, all right. Yes, Mayor.
I think I'm hearing you say our first step. You've mentioned codes numerous times.
Yes, sir.
And they are antique. We'll be the first to get that.
Yeah.
And we probably, if we're realistic, we can't bite this thing off all at once. We got to take nips at it.
Right.
What would be the first thing you suggest that we do?
Sit down with your group and map out a strategy would be, but if I were choosing, I would take that 09 plan, which is over there on the table, I would audit it. Say, what is useful? It's not, there's useful things there. What can we use here that we don't have to reinvent? And then I would go back and I would begin to, sorry, apologize for, okay. I would begin to, we need to refresh the base data. This meeting, so if I were doing this meeting a second time, I would have you folks engaged in that, what is our vision, develop that vision. And then I would move from vision into rewriting the code. That would be the steps, if that's not too general an answer. That's kind of what, start with what you got, and then, all right, let's bring it. Because I raised the question, can you build a city for the year 2030 with, you gotta maintain the stuff. It's gotta be kept fresh.
You never mentioned bike paths. Is that significant for the community or not?
Yes, sir. It's very significant, and especially in New Albany. Now, I don't know what the opportunities are and what the demand levels are, but the very fact that Tanglefoot is the most, you can't walk down there in the fall and October and all of that, and then you will have more and more people attracted to the community because of that. I would think, we've got Office Planning and Design on our team for the very reason they are the nation's foremost bike ped planners. And so from our limited view, I would guess that it's very important that it be done with.
And Bob, the street cross-section that Bob showed very briefly, it showed cycling. All of the street cross-sections that we do for the plan talk about all ranges of mobility. So as you can see, pedestrians and cyclists and automobiles.
I'm thankful the mayor's here because I want him here. We're not suggesting millions and millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure investment. Although there may be certain projects that you might want to tackle. Usually in a planning process, we are preparing for incremental daily decisions that happen little one bite at a time that guide things on a day-to-day basis. So when you see that, this community is not, although they did have one developer go out and build this very thing, a boulevard, into their new development because they had a street cross-section pattern to work from.
And
Yeah.
NDOT is like many other state DOTs.
Good point.
For example,
Yeah.
NCDOT. If you have a vision like this and they have a project in your community, they're going to pay attention to your vision. If you don't have a vision, they're going to build the lowest level of...
Isn't Zach Stewart a New Albany person? He's no longer the guy, but I'm assuming Mr. Stewart be connected up to doing some cool stuff. I'm guessing, just my guess. So that's on them. Yes, sir.
I know every town's different. Normal time frame of sort of what you're looking at in one of these?
The plans we like to do, we budget from 12 to 14 months. There's an inevitable delay of some sort, so they end up being a year and a half. If they come off really well, we'll hit the schedule. But a year and a half or so.
What would $500,000 do as far as the community plan? How much?
Oh, I thought you meant a 500. That'd be, yeah. Do a lot.
Fremont.
Yeah. It would be very project dependent. So if I said there was a $500,000 investment, I would immediately take it and want to leverage it. Say, all right, can we leverage it up against MDOT? Can we leverage it up against ARC? Who's got the money that'll partner with us? And then see if I can turn 500,000 into $1 million or $1.5 million or $2 million or whatever the number is. Y'all know TVA power, aren't you? TVA. So I can't answer your question. I'm stalling to say I can't answer it because I don't know. It'd be project dependent and detail dependent, but could do quite a lot. You can do a lot with
5 miles of street.
There we go.
Well, not quite 5.
Yeah.
And we got 87 in New Albany.
Yeah. Yeah. So y'all have been wonderful. and I've gone way, way over time. I appreciate your attention, but the questions were great. I thank you. Orion, on behalf of Orion, Shelley's with us on our team, and all of our team members who are not here. I waved a couple of them off because I said, the community's still thinking through this. So think it through. That's fine. Have a good discussion about it. Everything I portrayed to you is what we believe and what we do. We think we do good work, and we think we help communities. Thank you for your attention. Billie Jean, are you going to close it? Is there any need to?
I don't need to say anything other than thank y'all for coming out, and
Okay. Thank y'all. Thank y'all.